Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's first video doing the October 2020 month-end forecast for today's first video. So we're going to have a review on September's forecast as the first thing we do with this video. Then we will give you the GavsWeatherVids October forecast. And at the end of the video, we will have a little sneak peek at CFSV2 for November. That'll be coming up right at the very end of the video. So it's going to be quite a busy day at GavsWeatherVids today. So coming up later on, we're going to have the weekend forecast as well as on a Saturday. Got weekend broadcast, we'll have a 10 to 14 day video update as well. There's going to be a channel members live stream at 5 o'clock this afternoon. So if you're a channel member, then please check in to the live stream and we'll have a little bit of a chat for an hour or so. And it'll be, you know, a very intimate sort of chat with myself and with channel members, and that'll be coming up from 5 o'clock this afternoon. So I'll see everyone there, I suppose. Right, so first we've got to do is talk about the September forecast. So, GWV September forecast was for average to slightly warmer than average temperatures. We thought it would probably come out a little bit warmer than average with the temperature, although we expected cooler and warmer spells to alternate and offset one another to some degree. We did think that overall the average would probably tip over slightly above average. And rainfall wise, again, we expected quite average sort of conditions, a little bit wetter, perhaps the northern western areas a little bit drier than average for southern and eastern areas. Not a particularly big deviation either way. We thought that there would be, again, settled and unsettled spells that would alternate. So quite a changeable September, but with protracted periods of drier and warm weather and protracted periods of cooler, wetter conditions. Well, this is how September comes out in terms of the climate average page at UK Met. So you can see that for temperature, actually it was very close to average, set against the 81 to 2010 average. So the far southeast of England had a slightly milder average month. The far north of Scotland had a slightly milder than average month. One or two very small areas in northwest England had a slightly cooler average month. Most places were within half a degree of the 81 to 2010 average. Now, the way this worked out, though, was that we had like 3 weeks of significant warm weather and then a final week of very cold weather. Very cold for the time of the year, for the last week of September. And that really did pull that average temperature down during the last week. I'm going to say that the GavsWeatherVids forecast on the temperature side of things wasn't too bad, because we said we'd have warmer and colder weather alternating. We said we would probably come out a little bit warmer than average. I think if you took the first 3 weeks, we did come out warmer than average, quite substantially so. It's out last week, but really pulled it back. I think from a temperature side of things, it wasn't too bad a forecast. Rainfall-wise, many places came out with a drier than average month. So we do see that it's a little bit wetter average for North West Scotland, and also, quite bizarrely, across East Anglia. Very wet month across East Anglia. I think that happened in the final days of the month, where there was a low pressure in the North Sea that brought a lot of wet weather in towards the coast of East Anglia. But generally, it was a very significantly drier than average month through most parts of the UK. And so I think from a rainfall perspective, we say that the forecast wasn't terribly good. So it's a little bit drier than we expect. Although we did always expect quite a lot of dry weather during September. But we thought there would also be periods of wet and windy weather too. We thought we'd probably get one big storm at some point that, would be a named storm. And so on. I think overall we say that September forecast was a mixed bag, but I don't think it was too bad. It didn't crash and burn. It wasn't one of those forecasts that just went terribly wrong from start to finish. I think there was a lot of decent aspects to the GavsWeatherVids September forecast, but also a few things that didn't quite go to plan. So I would, out of 10, I would give it probably like a 6. Out of 5, I would give it probably around 3. It was one of those in between sort of forecasts, but I don't think it was too bad. Let me know in the comments what you think to the GavsWeatherVids September forecast. Right, so time to move on with October. So this is how October's 700 millibar height anomaly is looking, and from CFSV2. And if this is right, it's a very unsettled month, actually, with a deep area of below average heights right over top of the country. We've got a mid-Atlantic ridge in the middle of the North Atlantic, so high press out in the Atlantic and away to our northeast. It's sending a jet stream on like a northwest-southeast trajectory. So quite a cool and unsettled October in forecast there. Probably quite a cool and wet October being forecast actually. So very, very autumnal month coming up. We are on the cool side of a jet stream where the trough and the ridge is aligned. So the temperature anomaly for October actually hints for the west of Europe at being ever so slightly below average. So average to ever so slightly below average for western parts of Europe, which, of course, for the CFS is quite unusual because the CFS does tend to be quite focused on mild weather a lot of the time. Northern and eastern parts of Europe are coming out with above average temperatures there. So the cool weather is out in the west with that trough of low pressure. So certainly no better than average temperatures, and maybe hinting at being a little bit below average for the temperature. And as far as rainfall is concerned, a very substantially wetter than average month coming up for western parts of Europe. This is the scale down here, so you can see when we get into these blue colours, we're going right to the very edge of the scale in terms of the wet weather. So yeah, significantly above average rainfall here, not only for the UK, but through most parts of Western Europe as well. Some parts of Scandinavia also hinting being a little bit wetter than average too. So I think could be really looking at a very substantially wetter than average October here, and pretty cool as well. Very wet month and quite a cold month coming up if CFSV2 is right. Now this is how CANSIPS is looking. So this mean sea level pressure anomaly, basically very similar to the CFS, but it's a slightly different way of looking at it. What you basically have to focus on with this is the colours. So again, we've got these blue colours, that's low pressure, so you see lots of low pressure coming in off the Atlantic jet stream. Again, north, line a little bit northwest, southeast. There's some sort of ridge around here, and we've got sort of blocking up to our northeast as well. So again, another quite wet month is indicated here, unsettled month, low pressure dominated, with above average rainfall probably and below average temperatures, or sort of average to below average. This temperature anomaly again looks a little bit on the cool side. This is quite cool for CANSIPS. Again, CANSIPS, one of those models that tends to be very, very focused on above average temperatures a lot of the time, so it's only around average, possibly hints at being a little bit below. If we come over here to Germany, for example, you'll see that there is a little bit of pale blue there. That's slightly below average on the temperature scale. I mean, we're not talking about a very cold month here because it's unsettled. So it's not one of those months that's dominated by blocking high pressures and we're having lots of frost. It won't be that sort of month, but just a lot of cool, wet days probably. And in between the wet weather, when the skies are clear, probably some quite cold nights as well. Rainfall anomaly with CANSIPS. This is at tropical-tidbits.com, by the way. I'm not sure if they said it's Tropical Tidbits. So rainfall anomaly is substantially above average too. So a wet and cool month coming up with both CFSV2 and with CANSIPS as well. Then lastly, we've got Beijing Climate Centre. So this is the Beijing Climate Centre 500 millibar height anomaly for October 2020 from the 1st to the 30th. Again, low pressure is over into the North Country, Mid-Atlantic Ridge, lines up jet stream northwest to southeast. Again, this one is also therefore looking cool and unsettled. Temperature anomaly is a little bit closer to average with this one. It's more close to average to slightly above average, whereas the other two are close to average or slightly below average. But this probably tips over onto the above average side temperature anomaly. And again, similar to the other two models, it is also going for a wetter than average October, not only for the UK, but through most parts of Northern Europe. So we have got a very, very clear signal here from all three models this October to be really unsettled. Of course, we're starting off on a very unsettled note as well. So I think the only thing we can go for with this forecast is going to be quite an unsettled October. I think we will have above average rainfall for this October, and it is potentially, you know, a really very wet month, especially I think the first half of the month. It could be quite interesting this, in that the first half of October could be very wet. The second half of October might actually have a little bit more in way of higher pressure, but these, you know, these 30-day anomaly maps perhaps aren't picking up on it as well. So we have like very low pressure dominated weather up to mid-month, possibly even into the third week of the month. But then later on, probably later in the third week into the final week, it probably turns more anticyclonic. Now, where that high pressure sits is going to be very interesting, Because if high pressure sits to our east, then we possibly turn quite warm later on in the month as it turns drier. But my hunch is that high pressure will probably be quite centrally located, bring a fair amount of chilly weather, and I reckon, because we seem to be in a repeating pattern at the moment of northerly winds in the last week of the month. We had this in August, we had it again in September. Northerlies in the final week of the month seem to be like in a 4-week recurring pattern. So my guess is that initially the high pressure will ridge in and sit over country, just bring close to average temperatures, but possibly quite cold by night. But I would expect that's later on in the 3rd week of the month. And then the final week of the month possibly takes that high pressure north again. We might send it to Greenland and pull down a cold northerly wind again in the last week of October. If we do that, then it could get really quite cold. We might get our first snow showers of the season. Proper snow showers for northern east parts of Scotland, and significant overnight frost would be expected there as well. And that's like in the final week, particularly the last 5 days perhaps of the month. And so if that comes off, I think we'll probably come away with a cooler than average month. So I'm going to tentatively say that our temperature anomaly for this October is likely to be a little bit below average. I don't think it'll be a very cold month, but I think it is likely to be below average. We start off with a lot of cool, wet weather, possibly turns a little bit milder and drier, and then I think we may well get a northerly plunge in the last week of the month. That will be something to watch out for, to see whether that repeating 4-week pattern of northerlies in the final week of the month reoccurs. So our second below average temperature month for this October, following on from July. That will only be the second time this year that we have had a colder than average temperature for a month, and I think that is quite likely this October, and above average rainfall, but particularly wet in the first half, and then probably getting a little bit drier through the second half. Finally, I will leave you with the November CFSB2 700 millibar height anomaly. So this is it, little sneak peek. This looks more classically mild and westerly, with above average heights to our south, below average heights to the north. So you see the difference. The winds are in from the west. You see the difference. That's November. I'll take you back to October. That's October. You see the difference. In October, the low pressure is centred over top of UK with a mid-Atlantic ridge, which would line up the jet stream northwest to southeast. That's why it's not only a wet month, but also quite a cool month. In October, it all looks much more flatter, low pressure to the north, high pressure to the south. And so instead of bringing the jet stream on the northwest southeast alignment, the jet stream is just going west to east. And in November, that's going to be quite mild. So CFS is indicating a mild, but still quite changeable November looking likely. We'll worry about November when we get to it, because we've got quite an interesting October here. So the GavsWeatherVids October forecast is for an unsettled month with above average rainfall, perhaps quite significantly above average, and particularly so through the first half of the month, a trend towards drier conditions later. Temperature-wise, I think we go for slightly cooler than average for this October, which is a big risk because it's been a very warm year so far, with only 1 month, July, that came out anywhere remotely below average. But otherwise, been a very warm year, really. So it's quite risky, this, but I think we will go for a cooler than average October, or colder than average October, by around half a degree below the 81-2010 average. So not a desperately cold month, but a little bit below average, wetter than average too, wettest in the first half, driest in the second half. Watch out for the risk of a northerly plunge in the 4th and final week of the month. We shall see how it all plays out, and as ever, we will review the forecast when we come to do November's forecast at the beginning of next month. We're going to be back later on with your weekend forecast, so come back for that then, 10 to 14 day video update after that. So keep checking back to the website, the channel, for all of the updates. That's all for now, though, and thanks for watching.